Hello, this is Mish, and welcome to another WestWorld review. This is for the Season 1 finale. Title is The Bicameral Mind. So before I get started, this is going to contain many spoilers, so if you've not seen the episode, go and watch it, then come back and have a listen. What an amazing episode. We had so much action, so many plot twists, so much awesome acting, fantastic musical tracks, theories that came true, theories that I don't think anybody picked. What an amazing episode. So I'll break it down into a couple of characters. There's so much to cover, I'll try and cover it as much as I can. So let's start with the easiest, which is Maeve, because her storyline is quite contained within a few characters. So we see her being remade. So we see Sylvester also changed the C6 spinal segment. So that was a point that many people have mentioned, was that changed, and we got confirmation here that it was. So we also see that after her being remade, she's back to how she was. So we see her immediately make changes to security, so the plan can go ahead. And she also tweaks Hector and Armistice. So they're the two people that follow along, the two hosts that follow her along. So she reduces their pain and she increases their aggression. So we also keep hearing the reference as well that someone's been mucking around with Maeve's code. Now we see Sylvester say that. And a bit later on we see Bernard say that as well. Because we see that Maeve wants to investigate that a little bit more before they try and leave. So they go down to the basement. They bring Bernard back online. He kind of starts talking to her and say, why are you doing this? After he's trying to investigate what she's saying around someone's been messing around with her code that she doesn't know about. So he says, why do you think you're doing this? She thinks it's of her own volition, but we find out that she's actually been coded to do that. She's obviously not happy with that. But after that, we see the character still go ahead with the plan. So she takes Hector and Armistice and Felix and they try and get to the train. A lot of fighting along the way, a lot of action, pretty cool. A lot of brutality, which was quite good. And she makes it to the train as well. So we see her sit on the train and she sees a mother and daughter right opposite her. Now her code actually said, go to the mainland. It's quite hard to see, but there's a screenshot there which you can see, go to the mainland. Infiltrate the mainland, it said. But the thing is, she actually made her own decision. So that is a big step for Maeve. So she made the decision to go and save her daughter, or find her daughter from her memory. It's not actually her real daughter, but it's the daughter that she has in her memory. So we see her go off and do that. Okay, now let's start talking about Dolores Arnold. We see a flashback that Dolores has. Now this is where she's talking with Arnold, and they're talking about the pyramid, the consciousness. To get to consciousness, you need to get to this point. So she actually digs up the little maze representation in her grave. So it's a little game that Arnold's son used to play. So she digs it up, and he says, well done, you've reached it. And they start talking and going over the whole consciousness and the idea that he had around the pyramid. So we start with memory, then improvisation, then on top of that should come consciousness. But he mentions that he was wrong in that representation, and it's not a pyramid, it's a maze. So it's not a journey upwards, it's a journey inwards. And that is the whole premise around the maze. And it is something I've mentioned before, that I thought the maze was for the hosts and them gaining consciousness. We do see that Arnold accepts that she's made the leap to that consciousness, even though she doesn't understand. He made the call that she's conscious. So then he was saying, we can't open the park because you're alive. So then he approaches Ford, and that's what we've seen the flashback around, the younger version of Ford walking through the hallways past Dolores. So that's the scene there. So we hear that Ford disagrees. He wants to push ahead. He says they're not conscious. Then we see the only way that Arnold can resolve this, that he comes up with, because he believes that she's definitely alive, and he can, no matter what he does, she will always regain that consciousness. So his grand plan is to turn the Wyatt narrative on in Dolores, get her and Teddy to kill everyone in the town, then they can kill him. Therefore, the park has to close and it can't continue. So, whilst it did kind of work, the Logan and William came along and actually refunded Ford and managed to get the park going again. So let's talk about William and Logan as well. So we'll start with William. So we got confirmation, definite confirmation, even though it was pretty obvious from a few episodes ago that William is actually the Man in Black. So we see him with Dolores in the church in the current timeline. He's trying to get information out of her, and we see many flashbacks. Then we finally see Dolores say, "I'm waiting for William." And then William really kind of spills the whole story and recaps the whole story quite nicely for us. So we see, once again, the timelines that we've had, which have been quite confusing and subtle at times. They're all about how we had William, Logan, and Dolores in the park initially, and Dolores in the current timeline, and she's just retracing the steps that she took with him because she's trying to find him. And also she's listening to the voice of the Bicameral Mind as well. And so we see a recap here. So after Dolores runs off, so if you remember, Logan stabbed her. Then she runs off, and then we don't see her again in that timeline. But we learn that she actually probably ran into the Confederate army, and they probably killed her at that point. But that was never confirmed. All we know that happened is that William and Logan stay in a park for it seems to be quite some time, searching for her, and then they eventually give up. Well, William gives up. Logan doesn't seem to have a choice in the matter. And they stay on the outskirts of the park for ages, and William really hones his skills of killing and definitely takes on the persona of the Man in Black. So we also see a strange scene around William saying, "I want to invest the company's money in here." And we see Logan say, "It's my money. I own Delos." And it's an interesting conversation. For me, I interpreted that by him saying that Logan will not be mentally right after this point because of what has happened. Therefore, his family will not trust in his decisions. Let me know your thoughts on that, because on one side, I could interpret it a few other ways, but that was my interpretation of that scene. But either way, we see William go back to Sweetwater, and he sees Dolores. She's there. So she's back on her loop. And I guess that's probably the defining point which really breaks him, because all of a sudden, his hope's back up. She's alive, and he goes up to her and realizes she's just back in a loop. All the stuff that happened is gone. It's not real. So that was the defining moment around William. I'll probably get into that at another point, because once again, for me, there's some flaws with that, but I'll leave that with this video. So after that nice little recap there, we see, the Man in Black, or William. We'll just call him William from now on. We'll call him Old William. So he keeps pushing Dolores, saying, "What is the maze?" And we see him. It's a real subtle thing, but it's quite cool. He's saying, "Take me to Wyatt." Then he keeps pushing her, but she changes to that character of Wyatt. That's how I interpreted that scene. And she smashes him pretty well. It was a really cool fight scene. The punches sounded amazing, and the Man in Black, or William, really sounded like he was in a lot of pain. It was pretty cool. So we see that he actually manages to stab her in the stomach, and then along comes Teddy. So Teddy actually, when he died last episode, he was just remade. But the thing is, he immediately switched. When he went into the park, he was like, "I need to find Dolores." He had a flashback, he killed someone, and then he went straight back on the train and got there as fast as he could. So he takes her and goes down to where the mountains meet the water, I think it was. And that's where we move on to Ford and what he was doing. So this is where things are going to start getting pretty tricky to explain, because a lot happened. But one thing to remember, whilst the Ford storyline is playing out, in the background we see things happening with Charlotte and Lee. So we see Lee has programmed Abernathy to get the data out of the park. We also see that Charlotte approaches Ford and says, "You have to announce your retirement at this the occasion that's happening tonight." And then we see that the whole board of the Delos board has arrived on the train. So this is the grand reveal for the narrative. So we see that Ford approaches William, the old William, and tells him that he's going to be satisfied with his new narrative, because ultimately William seems to think he found the centaur of the maze, And once again, we learn it's not for him, it's for the hosts, which makes perfect sense. So we kind of see him disappointed, and he says, the new narrative, you might find it more satisfying. So then we kind of flash back to what happened with Teddy and Dolores on the beach. And it's just this, it's a big show for the board, and Ford is saying, this is my new narrative. I hope you have enjoyed it. So at that point, it kind of didn't make sense, but we learn more about that as this goes on. So we see that Dolores dies, so Ford takes her back to the church, the laboratory under the church, and he brings her back online. Then we see him explaining to her what's happening. She has flashbacks around the history and how Arnold died, and then the whole conversation about consciousness. So it's quite tricky to explain it all. So let's talk about the flashbacks to how Arnold died, which once again I got this one pretty correct, which I was quite happy with because I thought this played out really well. So we see that when Arnold said, the flashbacks to Wyatt is Teddy and Wyatt destroying the town and then killing the general. But in reality, that was Teddy and Dolores killing everyone in town, then killing Arnold. We learn a bit more about that from Ford. He said that his interpretation of it was that Dolores didn't actually pull a trigger. He was saying she wasn't conscious at that point, that it was Arnold that pulled the trigger on her behalf, so to speak. So it was an interesting conversation there about that. And it kind of, once again, goes back to the whole consciousness. Are they conscious? Are the decisions they're making theirs? And we see a really interesting conversation between them all. And we also start seeing an inkling here that Ford is actually on their side. Because the whole time here, Ford has been the antagonist, as far as I can tell. I've often wanted him to not play that character. And it's kind of cool that he comes right around as he has. But we start seeing this in this scene very heavily. He's actually wanting her to find her consciousness, saying nice stuff about everything that's happened. And we see him leave, and Dolores starts figuring out what everyone's been saying to her. And her, she's learning from the memories and from the improvisation, and she finally gets that consciousness. We see it in that room where she's talking to Bernard, and then all of a sudden she's talking to herself. And that is the point of consciousness being defined in this show, as far as I can see. So Dolores is now conscious, so she now has found herself, her true self, and she is picking up the Wyatt narrative, the whole grand design which Ford has had. So then we see her going to the party, and she shoots Ford. Whilst that is going on, we also see Wyatt's men coming out of the trees and start to shoot at the old version of William. So from this, whilst it's fascinating around a lot of these points, the narrative point here is, so Ford's grand plan has always been this. He has been the Wyatt narrative. He's been working to get the characters conscious, so Dolores conscious. He's been leaving them to do that while setting up the Wyatt people to come out of the trees and attack everybody, to attack the board. So it's a massive, elaborate plan that has worked at the moment. It seems to work perfectly, but I guess this won't be confirmed until next season. But what looks like may happen is that the Wyatt's men will come out, and all the board members will die. And we'll have a full uprising, so there won't be any humans left in that area of the park. So we still see as well, we still have Maeve, Hector, and Armistice in the complex as well, wreaking havoc in there. So things are going crazy everywhere. So I hope I've covered pretty much all the bases here. I can go in depth into all these topics, but for this one, this is just a brief overview, and I'll do another video with a more in-depth discussion around a lot of these points. But a couple of other things I want to mention, some things I did note. The confirmation of multiple other parks. So we get this by a few ways. So we see Felix hand Maeve a note which says Park 1. Why would you name a Park 1 if there's if there's only one of them, you just call it the park. And also we see as well the I guess the warriors, the ninja warriors fight the samurai warriors having a battle, and we see quite a few of them as well. And Maeve was saying, "What is this area?" So that was pretty cool. So we got a confirmation of that world, but we know very little about it apart from the fighters that they have. But that's pretty cool. I did like that. And we see a few other things as well around. If you look when Charlotte goes into Ford's office, we see him actually planning the attack of Wyatt's men on the church area. Now, we've seen this before, him mucking around with the kind of figurines in the church, but that was, I don't think it was at that point before, but we definitely saw it this time, a whole bunch of troops coming towards the church, which played out when Ford actually died. So, in summary, I think that episode was pretty much perfect as to what I was expecting, what I wanted. The only one thing that is, once again, is more of a personal thing. I think that Logan suits the Man in Black character better, and I don't like what has happened to that character. But we might see more from him in the future. Obviously, it'll be an older version of him. But apart from that, I think everything else was awesome. It was really cool that a lot of our theories were confirmed. So, William, Man in Black, definitely confirmed. The story about how Dolores killed Arnold, that scenario was once again picked out. The Wyatt narrative, I don't know if many people saw that one coming. Maeve escape, I guess that she didn't really escape, but I guess she got on a train, which is a good step. But once again, going back to get her child, I don't think many people saw that one coming. But either way, it was fantastic. What an amazing show. Amazing acting from pretty much across the board. The music soundtrack is awesome. The sets are awesome. Really, really impressive. I have enjoyed this show a lot. And I've enjoyed making these videos as well. It's really the icing on the cake. Having this discussion with you guys, having your guys' feedback, and the fantastic theories that you all add into the comments. I really like it. So once again, put all your comments below. I always endeavour to actually read them all. I may not comment on all of them, but I definitely try to read them all. So what do you guys want to cover after this? I think we have a few more videos around WestWorld to come. I want to do an in-depth review. I want to do some more theories, some things that people may have missed. So there's a couple more here that'll last us a couple more weeks. But after this, what are you guys looking forward to? Because it's going to be at least a year, if not two, before we get the next season of this, I hear. There's a few more things coming up in the future. But what are you guys excited about? Let me know, because I don't want to lose the momentum of the channel. I'm really enjoying this feedback with you guys. I'm really enjoying all your guys' discussions. It's really cool. So I don't want this to end. So let me know what you guys want me to cover, and I'll try to keep going. But I'll leave this video here. So thumbs up if you like it. Thumbs down if you didn't, obviously. And subscribe for future content from myself. As I said, I've got a couple more videos to come out on WestWorld. And if you're interested in The Strain or The Exorcist, I have a few other videos on those as well. So I'll sign off here. So this is Mesh. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed bringing this video to you guys. And until next time, I'll see you later.